Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am finally here now with Murray Greer from Sol Realty, and he's going to be helping me answer a bunch of questions that you guys have been sending me about how to buy property here and all the rules and taxes and all this kind of stuff associated with it. He's going to try to the best of ability to answer as much as he can. Of course, some things are more of an accountant or a lawyer designation. However, we're going to try our best, and he's the one that did help us buy the condo here that I mentioned in the previous video that I'll link above. And he's amazing. You guys, like after closing, he came and he helped us open a bank account here and get internet installed, and it was just such an easy experience. And we don't speak any Spanish, so that stuff is actually really difficult to do here. And it was super helpful and amazing. So if you are here in town and wanting to buy, I highly recommend him. And now, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? And thank you for doing this video with me.
Thank you for having me. I've seen, I think you did 2 or 3?
Yes.
And I've watched them, and it's good information, folks. These guys bought a year ago. I was there through the process. And what you've said on those YouTube programs it's the information you need to know, and you still need to know more. I mean, it's just sometimes you just gotta know everything. You asked about myself. I used to be a consumer banker in the United States. I worked for a credit union, actually. I did mostly mortgage loans, car loans, personal loans, and then personal banking. I was a district manager that managed 5 different offices in Charleston, South Carolina. I moved to Costa Rica full-time and to have a career here March 2006, so I'll be coming up on my 15-year anniversary in March. And things have changed quite a bit in that time. But I've done work all over Costa Rica for clients. I used to specifically work for purchasers only, an exclusive buyer's agent. Now those buyers are sometimes selling, so I do represent a few listings. But yeah, 15 years and 14 of those right here. So this is our specialty in this area, and then making sure our clients don't have any risk exposure or as little as possible, and don't have any pitfalls that sometimes happen here. Yeah.
So lots of information he has over 15 years gained. And I'll just start now, and it's just going to be a Q&A type video, and I'll list the questions at the bottom so you guys can follow along easier.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How is the market right now in Costa Rica? Has COVID really affected it? Has there been sales going on? Is it better? Is it worse? What's the situation?
Like anywhere, it was inescapable.
Yeah.
Actually, there were sales going on here in Costa Rica, probably an average of 3 per month that I can. In
this area, in Tamarindo.
Right, our local, let's say, region.
Yes.
They were typically homes in the $750,000 market above, and they were typically buyers who had been shopping for some time, because nobody was coming to shop. So of course, for the most part, it was dead. What has been surprising and is new is that as of Thanksgiving week, which is about 4 weeks ago, my phone started ringing, and we have the number of visitors and tourists that we are used to having at this time, this is the beginning of our high season, which lasts until Easter. And I still am thankful and amazed that this many people came this soon. I didn't expect to see the volume we have in the streets until another 6 to 8 months. Yeah. But my phone's ringing. I've been doing showings. People are here a lot sooner than expected, and it's good for everybody. So I couldn't ask for more. And if you're looking to buy, it's probably one of the best times to make offers and purchase. Yep.
And a question one of you reached out to me and asked was, did prices go down here during COVID?
It's a cash market also, so sellers here, they're not used to seeing homes turn over. They're not as liquid in a cash market. And lowering a sale price if you were a seller wasn't going to make a buyer appear in the middle of COVID. Now, I had purchasers that were shopping. You talked to Eugene, your husband, and I said, hey, you may not have lowered the price, but you may be able to get them to take a better offer. Yes. But no, lowering, we didn't see prices lower. That doesn't mean that you couldn't buy it for less. But we didn't see anything like that happen.
People are used to holding on to the property for sure. So, can I buy here as a foreigner?
Yes, you do not have to have any kind of residency or citizenship in Costa Rica, nor do you need a Costa Rican citizen or resident to be on the deed with you. You can buy in Costa Rica, and you have all the same rights and privileges with regards to property ownership that a Costa Rican would have. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to have anything other than a passport and not be on America's Most Wanted.
Okay.
But yeah, even businesses, you can operate a business here too. There's taxes you need to pay, but you don't need a residency or citizenship or anybody that does to buy and own property in Costa Rica.
Okay, great. Are people buying from abroad without seeing? What's your opinion on that? Should they see it? Should they touch it? What's the situation?
I don't even I think if you're shopping, you need to have walked it. Of course, there's people that aren't, and I have 2 or 3 times a year, there might be somebody that's first time here, they walk in the door, and they're ready.
Yeah.
And you can see it in their eyes. But that's the exception. Most times, you need to come down here and you need to visit different towns. Nobody's going to be able to answer the question where you should move to. If somebody does tell you that, you need to really come down and walk it. I mean, you might even be wrong.
Yeah.
But do your research online. Compare what you hear to make sure it's
Accurate.
valid and accurate. You can always contact myself or Katarina or somebody like that. But yeah, coming down here and really experiencing it is almost a must-do. I've had a client buy down here 2 condos at one time. He never came down here, and he sold them 9 months later, and he broke even.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the point was.
Yeah.
But Costa Rica isn't exactly for everybody.
No, it's not. It's very pura vida. It's not like North America. Everything is like mañana, which is like tomorrow. And it's like it's a very different vibe.
I'm not going to ever sell somebody on Costa Rica or on Tamarindo for that matter, because if you don't know that, there's not really a reason to get started.
For sure.
So I think you need to come down here and walk it for yourself, and anybody that that can be doing it with you. You'll know if it's for you or not, and when you find the right property, you'll know it as well.
And from a consumer perspective, you need to be here and see it, just because it's very different from what we're used to in North America construction-wise. Like, it's very good construction, it's solid, it's all concrete built, so that's not the issue. It's more of like the condos we're used to in Toronto, the newer construction in Manhattan. It's like floor-to-ceiling windows, very modern, very clean. It's not as common to find something like that here, so you might be like pleasantly shocked or like pleasantly surprised, I don't know, whichever, but it's something you need to see for sure before making that plunge and spending this money, right? What is the typical buying process here once I have found what I want?
Well, you would make your offer, submit it to the seller, and let's assume that it's accepted. You have, from the moment that the contract is signed by both people and made executed, typically you have 2 to 3 weeks to put a 10% deposit, 10% of the purchase price down, and that during that period is also when you're doing your due diligence. Your money, any money you might have sent to escrow, which I recommend hiring an escrow agent, is refundable throughout the due diligence period, and your lawyer is going to be making sure that everything is solvent and ready to be sold and can be transferred in that period too. So you should not have any unforeseen risks before you send a dime. But 10% down, in the first 3 weeks, and then 45 days from when you sign, typically, if we're doing a cash deal, 45 days or less is what we assign for when the closing date should be.
Okay.
And you can certainly do it sooner than that, as long as you got other people to think about if they can too. But I've seen a deal close as little as 3 weeks before.
Okay, good to know. So what is a cash market? You keep mentioning cash market. What does that mean?
I'm glad you said that, because it means different things to different people. It means that there are not many options for mortgage financing. There's banks here, yes. The rates for a mortgage here are much higher than what North Americans are used to. They're typically 10 to 12%. A bank here is not going to be on your timeline or the contract's timeline. They're kind of on their own timeline.
Yeah.
I'm not beating banks up. It's just that there's not an MLS here where sales are recorded and you can look and see values properly.
Yeah.
People that are local here, like myself and my partner, we know what things are worth more than a banker can find out that lives in San Jose because the information is just not published. So when I say cash market, typically, your best advantage as a buyer would be to have the cash, whether it's from a property you borrowed in the United States. The other option that's becoming more and more popular, although it shouldn't be expected from a buyer, is that a seller will finance the purchase for somebody to purchase their home. That's because sellers, they can't wait around for somebody to have that kind of cash. The most active market is the entry level market because that's the one that most people can afford, and it's also not limited to people that can only afford that. Most people buy where prices start at 150 and up to say the 250 range, which is again where things start here, and it's limited in supply. But that's where you're going to get your best return on investment. That's what's going to rent the most. That is what will be most sellable when it's time for you to resell, if you want to upgrade or just sell. The second most active is the uber luxury market. And then it kind of works its way into the middle. But the most active turnover rate for purchasing and the most active rental market is the 150 to 250 price range, which is disappearing quickly.
Okay. What can you get for that $150 to $250,000 price range? Like, what can I expect to get for that?
They're almost exactly the same what you get. 100, that's going to get you, typically you're going to be in a condominium situation, condominium horizontal, where you're going to have common areas and you're going to have a homeowners association fee due each month, or stratas, I think they call in Canada. So typically you should be, for that price, getting something about an 800 to 1,000 square foot property that you own individually.
That's where we are, by the way. We're in that market bubble. 2-bedroom,
2.5 bathroom typically. You're usually going to have a pool that's, a common area thing. It's going to be a courtyard type. You should have security, whether it is electric gates or if it's a manned guard situation. It usually covers the paint of the exterior of the building every so often. The bylaws of every condominium product, and that's called a condominium horizontal as far as the structured type of property that is, will have bylaws that will tell you what is included and go over, if there's a dog a restriction, things of that nature. Those monthly HOA fees or strata, they start at about 200, 205, I think is the cheapest you should expect. And then if you get into buildings that are $500,000 or have an elevator in them or something like that, you should see 500 or more is where that's going to go. We're able to tell you if it's worth what you're getting. But typically it takes care of all of your common areas for you.
So what are the different costs associated with closing, and how much should a buyer typically expect to pay for this?
The closing procedures are the same as what you're probably used to in the United States. A closing fee is going to be typically 4% of the purchase price. And that's an approximation, and I use 4% to quote buyers in closing, the total closing. And that usually covers the escrow account service. Also usually will include if the purchaser wants to open a corporation. 4% usually is going to be a good number, and historically the buyers pay the closing costs in Costa Rica. We do see a lot more of where it's split. I don't call it 50-50, but it's split, pretty much in half. And then if you're coming in with a price that's, a lowball offer, sometimes as an incentive for the seller, you may want to offer to pay all of the closing costs. But it is negotiable. And it is 4% of the sales price in general.
So if every 100,000, about $4,000.
About $4,000 for every 100,000 of purchase.
So how much is property tax in Toronto, for example, Canadian? It's different by region, by municipality, by area even. It can change drastically here. Is it by region, by area, or is it a countrywide property tax? And what is that?
Yeah, it's actually the nation sets the annual property taxes,
Okay.
And they're very low. The property tax is 1/4 of 1% of the property price, or you could argue market value. You know, we tell people that are buying now, and let the attorney tell you that the purchase price is what you should base it on, and so 1/4 of 1% of $100,000, as an example, is $250 per year. So if you bought a $200,000 home, you would pay $500
Okay.
per year in taxes, and that's at most.
And that's on what you pay annually once a year?
Once a year, and it's
Okay.
as easy as paying it at the bank.
Okay.
There is a price range that you hit a threshold where it's called a luxury property,
Yep.
which is defined by the cost of the land versus the construction price. And that's something an attorney really should explain. So if you get into the $400,000 homes and above, it could be subject or defined as a luxury property, and that would mean it's 1/2 of 1% of the.
So $500 for every 100,000.
Right, and you really want to make sure you talk to your attorney on that, because it's based on the land value and the construction value differently.
So lawyer.
Yeah, they're lower than what you're paying. I think is probably safe to say.
And you mentioned we can buy under a corporation. So that's more just for tax reasons and different what you want to do with it, or is it better now to just buy under my name? Like, what difference is that?
It was a lot of people always bought in Costa Rican corporations, and there's several kinds, just like there are in the United States.
Yeah.
And they have the same function. It's really dependent upon the person.
Okay.
There used to be you had a lot of fees and costs you could avoid by using a corporation in the past that doesn't do anymore. And it used to have anonymity, so that if you had a corporation, nobody knew it unless you told them. That's not the case anymore. So we do see more and more people putting homes in their name.
Okay.
But you do want to talk to an attorney, because if you wanted to have limited liabilities, or if you want to have it divided with shares, say to your family, and avoid probate, down the road, and various other reasons that are going to be specific to the buyer. But to answer your question, you can do it in
either way,
one of several corporations or in your name.
Yeah, so very situational. Okay. And in the due diligence, you mentioned there's many things that's looked at, of course, by the lawyer, but as a buyer, can I do a home inspection on the property, and what would that gain me other than peace of mind? Like, what information do I get?
Yeah, well, first, yes, home inspections are things that are available here at a buyer, at a purchaser's option, because it's a cash purchase, so it's not a mortgage isn't going to require, and a lot of things for that matter. But yes, home inspections are something that are available, and I recommend, unless you have experience in that nature. You need to make sure, number one, that the property is structurally sound.
Okay.
Now, like, for example, there's properties I know, and I've bought and sold 5 or 6 units in, that I know are structurally sound. And aside from that, a home inspector is typically just going to run through and make sure the lights turn on, that the electric sockets have power coming through them, that the appliances work. The peace of mind structurally is important. The other aspects of it, they're not going to dig in the wall and tell you what the problem is. They'll just tell you if there is a problem. The prices for a home inspection are anywhere from $400, and I've seen it as high as $1,200. And what kind of reports you get from that can range from an email to a binded document. But that is something that's available, not required, and you wouldn't do that in due diligence. That's something you definitely want to know before you have any money put in escrow or invested at all. Because at any time during due diligence, you can walk away.
Okay, and get my 10% back.
Your 10% is refundable until that due diligence period is over.
Okay, and in terms of who's required to make a deal here, realtor is not really required, you said, but it's like highly recommended for the information, of course. But a lawyer, is required 100%?
Yeah, even for a car purchase, a lawyer has to do the registering, the transfer stamps, the notary, and all that.
And the escrow agent, you also said, is just a recommendation. You have to do it now.
I mean, it's just short of mandatory because otherwise you're going to be giving your 10% to either the attorney, which, people have done that, or the seller, and that's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
A buyer should have an escrow agent,
Okay.
and the fee for that is anywhere from $300 to $600. It's based on the price of the home.
Okay.
Consider that person, that's the person that's going to hold all the money.
Safely.
It's safely in one place. Your down payment, if you're purchasing, the money that, say, the seller needs to pay before, like in taxes or in utilities before he can sell the home, that money all goes into an escrow account, and at closing, one button is pushed, and that's where the money all goes at one time. And you want an escrow agent, because that third party acts like a referee to make sure that the contract is fulfilled by both parties. Yeah. So while not absolutely necessary, it's highly suggested you have an escrow agent, but an attorney is mandatory. And I can't even imagine what you want an attorney.
And last question for this video is, let's talk about rentals. So in Canada, at least, our mortgage time frame is usually 25 to 30 years. So that's kind of your payoff period. But here it's a cash market. So let's just use the entry level as an example. So if I were to buy something for $150,000, a condo here, what's the typical payout for that, whether it's Airbnb or full-time?
You mean if you buy a $150,000 condo, like we've discussed, how much time do you recoup your investment money?
Yes.
Cap rate, I think, is what a lot of people use. 10 years here is a real number.
10 years. Okay.
Anybody that tells you, you know what? I mean, I know for a fact that people have done it in 8, but I'm not going to tell you to expect that. 10 to 12 years is a realistic cap rate on property here, and that also depends on how actively you want to rent it. Mm-hmm. Some people just rent for the high holiday season, the 3 weeks of holidays, just because that can cover the whole year's operating costs. Yeah. Two things a person that's going to rent should know is that the demand for short-term rentals here and long-term rentals, meaning the weekly rental people and or people that live here like myself that do yearly rentals. The demand in both of those areas is higher than I've ever seen anywhere. So you have the option of doing either or. And what that means, it should be very easy for an investor of property, if they're going to rent, to be able to at least make sure it covers its operating costs and taxes and homeowners fees and all that. If that's not being done, you need to check with anybody, like a property manager you're using, or see how But to answer your question, your cap rate or your investment return should be about 10 years, and that's very realistic and very much what we see. Yeah.
Okay, so those are kind of all the questions you guys have asked me in terms of buying something that's already constructed. I hope it was informative and answered a lot of them. And if you have any more questions, you can contact me, of course, and I'll also link Murray's information down below. And whoever you feel more comfortable reaching out to is fine by us, and I'll be reaching back out to him for answers. So
I'm available anytime. You can see our webpage that's run by the owner of Sol Realty, Mark Price, at www.solrealty.com. You can look at different prices for different type of properties to see what price gets you things. You can contact myself there for follow-up, and you, of course. Because there is a lot more. We've scratched the surface here. But really can't do any more until we know which direction a buyer would be going.
So I'm here if you need anything else, and I hope it was an informative video. I'll link everything down below for you guys, so you can just look in the description box. Please subscribe to the channel, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays and Pura Vida.
Thank you.